A terrifying prison filled with some of the most notorious criminals imaginable. And to torture those prisoners, there are a group of ruthless prison officers running the place. Unfortunately, an innocent man gets trapped in a false fraud case and ends up inside this nightmare prison. Now he must prepare himself to endure the brutal torture inside the jail, while secretly creating a master plan to escape. What kind of brilliant escape plan does he come up with? And how does he successfully break out of this hell-like prison? To find out these shocking prison escape master plans, make sure to watch the video till the very end without skipping. The movie begins in the year 1976. A group of new prisoners is brought into a prison in Spain. This prison was specially designed with maximum security for the world's most dangerous thieves, robbers, and brutal killers. Among the crowd of prisoners, we see a young man named Manuel, the main character of the movie. Judging by his appearance and clothing, Manuel seems like a polite, educated man. So why is he in prison? We'll learn that later in the story. In the next scene, Manuel is sitting inside the prison. Nearby, he notices a 16 or 17-year-old boy crying. Feeling concerned, Manuel walks over to him, offers him a cigarette, and asks for his name. Suddenly, the prison warden enters and starts brutally beating the boy. Manuel feels terrible watching this happen and protests against it, but the warden slaps him across the face before dragging the boy away. After that, Manuel and all the prisoners are taken for inspection. The guards force everyone to remove their clothes and begin checking them. The purpose of this inspection is to make sure none of the prisoners are infected with contagious diseases. Also, in Spanish prisons, newly arrived inmates are kept in quarantine for 14 days to determine whether they are carrying any illnesses. During the inspection, the prison's senior officer, Domingo, becomes very interested in Manuel's suit. He offers Manuel 250 euros to buy it, but Manuel refuses to sell it. Domingo cannot tolerate being rejected like that. Although he becomes furious, he silently walks away. Later, one of the prison guards approaches Manuel and tells him that he made a very bad mistake. Because of this, Domingo will eventually forcefully take the suit away from him. Besides, if Manuel had sold the suit, he could have used the money to buy all the basic necessities he needed inside the prison. After the inspection, Manuel is assigned a filthy, dark, and suffocatingly small room to stay in. Along with it, he is given a dirty, foul-smelling blanket and half a bucket of filthy water. And shockingly, he is expected to use that same water for drinking and bathing for the next 14 days. Looking at the tiny amount of water, Manuel cannot even figure out whether he should drink it, bathe with it, or use it for basic bodily needs. That night, Manuel wraps himself in the blanket and falls asleep. But suddenly, in the middle of the night, he wakes up after feeling something biting him. He quickly realizes that bedbugs are crawling all over his body and sucking his blood. The next morning, Domingo arrives to inspect the prisoners. As soon as he comes near Manuel, Manuel starts complaining non-stop. He says that he desperately needs a bath because the filthy blanket and bug-infested bed have made his entire body smell terrible. Hearing this, Domingo starts verbally abusing him. At that moment, a man named Blackie arrives to distribute food. Blackie is a very friendly and social person who can easily make friends with strangers. Delivering food to all the prisoners is part of his job. While handing over the meal, Blackie secretly slips a cigarette to Manuel. The following day, a government lawyer comes to meet Manuel. During their conversation, we learn that Manuel's company has filed a fraud case against him. Manuel used to work as a manager at a large company. Following the owner's son's plan, he helped move a huge amount of money out of the company. But after the theft was discovered, the owner's son saved himself and framed Manuel for the entire crime. Because of this fraud case, Manuel could face up to 8 years in prison. After receiving no positive response from the lawyer, Manuel returns to his cell completely hopeless and frustrated. In a burst of anger, he grabs the bucket of dirty water and starts smashing it against the walls to release his rage. Hearing the noise, a guard comes over, and Manuel says he wants to file a complaint against the prison authorities. He wants to report the inhumane treatment, terrible food, and the suffering prisoners are forced to endure inside the jail. Surprisingly, the guard agrees and gives him a notebook and pen. But Manuel has no idea what is about to happen next. The moment Manuel begins writing, the guard suddenly starts beating him brutally. After getting beaten, Manuel realizes that complaining inside this prison is completely useless. This place is ruled entirely by cruel and corrupt people. Suddenly, Manuel notices something coming through a small hole in the corner of the wall. First, a cigarette appears, followed by a tiny note. The note says, "Don't lose hope, friend. We are with you." That small note gives Manuel a huge amount of courage and strength. After the 14 days finally end, Manuel is released from quarantine and transferred to a normal prison cell where he can stay with the other inmates. Manuel is assigned to a cell where Blackie and another inmate named Pino are already staying. The next morning, Manuel is sitting quietly when suddenly a group of prisoners attacks him. They brutally beat him, strip off all his clothes, and walk away with them. A short distance away, 2 prison guards watch the entire incident happen, yet they do nothing to stop it. Manuel cannot understand why this happened to him or why the guards refuse to interfere. Furious and humiliated, he goes to file a complaint. But when Manuel arrives at the complaint counter half naked, the guard there demands $300 from him. Because according to the prison's rules, any prisoner who wants to file a complaint must first pay $300. At that moment, Manuel fully realizes that this prison is run like a dictatorship. Complaining here is completely useless. Just then, another inmate approaches Manuel, calms him down, and takes him to the doctor's room. He also gives Manuel some clothes to wear. It is here that Manuel learns this prisoner was the same person who secretly sent him the cigarette and note while he was in quarantine. Soon after, Manuel meets a man named Boney, the prison doctor. Because of the beating, Manuel is suffering from severe pain in his teeth, so Boney gives him a painkiller injection. Several more prisoners come to meet Manuel. One of them is named Augustine. Augustine has come to invite Manuel to join a secret group inside the prison. He explains that he has already noticed Manuel's courage in several situations. Augustine says he is forming a committee made up of brave prisoners who will stand up against the zulm and injustice happening inside the prison. Since this is Manuel's first time in prison, he does not fully understand how things work there yet. So for the moment, he decides not to get involved with their activities. The next morning, Blackie takes Manuel to the prison workshop, hoping he might get a job there. If he can work, Manuel will at least have a chance to earn some money inside the prison.
When the workshop door opens, Agustin comes out and informs them that there are currently no jobs available. However, if a position opens up later, he will consider taking Manuel in. Feeling disappointed, Manuel and Blackie leave the place. At this point, we also learn about the story of how Blackie ended up in prison. Blackie had also been sent to this special prison made for thieves and robbers after getting caught for robbery. But robbery was not his only crime. While escaping after one of the thefts, Blackie had killed 3 people, including a police officer. However, the court still had not officially proven that Blackie committed the murders. If he were eventually found guilty after the trial, the death penalty would be unavoidable for him. In the next scene, a girl named Lucy comes to visit Manuel. Lucy is the younger sister of Manuel's ex-girlfriend. Here, we learn that after Manuel got trapped in the fraud case, Lucy's sister broke up with him, but Lucy herself secretly liked Manuel. That's why she came to the prison just to see him one more time. Manuel tells Lucy not to come to the prison anymore and walks away. However, he completely fails to understand the feelings hidden in Lucy's eyes. One day, Manuel notices the prisoners protesting because of the extreme torture and inhumane treatment inside the prison. During the chaos, Manuel spots Dr. Boney and rushes toward him. Pretending to examine Manuel's teeth in front of the police officers, Boney secretly slips a few pieces of paper into Manuel's hand. We will later learn why those papers are important. The next morning, it is revealed that because of the previous day's protest, the police released a few prisoners. Most of them were connected to political groups. As time passes, an entire year goes by in Manuel's prison life. Then one day, several guards suddenly come and take Blackie away. When Pino asks what happened, the guards reveal that since Blackie delivered food to every prisoner, he had secretly used that opportunity to dig a tunnel in the prison kitchen for a very long time. The following morning, the atmosphere inside the prison becomes extremely tense. As soon as Pino and Manuel step out of their cell, a senior guard informs them that during the investigation, Blackie suffered a heart attack and died. Hearing this news shocks Manuel deeply. He feels terrible after learning about Blackie's death. A little later, when Manuel walks outside, he sees Dr. Boney and several prisoners starting a protest, demanding to know the real reason behind Blackie's death. Suddenly, the police launch a brutal baton charge against the protesters. At that exact moment, a clever idea suddenly comes into Manuel's mind. He quickly enters his room and pulls out the papers that Dr. Boney had secretly given him earlier. Manuel throws some of those papers from the second floor down toward the protesting prisoners below. Then, he tosses the remaining papers out through the tiny prison window. As a result, people outside the prison begin to understand what is really happening inside. Soon, the citizens outside the prison start chanting slogans in support of the prisoners. When the warden finds out about Manuel's actions, he immediately sends guards to capture him. Manuel is once again locked inside the quarantine cell so that he cannot continue encouraging the prisoners to protest. One morning, a private lawyer named Harold comes to meet Manuel. Manuel tells him that he does not have the money to fight his case, but Harold says he is willing to take the case for free because he works for democratic rights and prisoner justice. Harold arranges for Manuel to be released from the quarantine cell. He also gives Manuel some money so he can write and submit a formal complaint to the authorities about the prison's current conditions. Late at night, while Manuel is writing the letter, he suddenly hears strange noises outside. He steps out of the room and sees several guards dragging away a man whose hands and body are tightly tied up. Terrified by the sight, Manuel begins shouting, but Pino quickly covers his mouth from behind and warns him that if the guards realize he is screaming, they will take him away too, and he will never come back alive. The next morning, after hearing loud commotion outside, Pino and Manuel step out of their cell and discover that Agustin has disappeared since the previous night. Nobody can find him anywhere. The prisoners already know why Agustin was removed. He used to educate inmates about their rights and raise awareness against the injustice happening inside the prison. He constantly encouraged prisoners to demand their basic rights and fair treatment, something the warden absolutely hated. The warden ruled the prison according to his own laws. Nobody dared speak against him, but Agustin openly exposed the warden's cruelty and abuse to everyone. Soon, Manuel sees Dr. Boni and several prisoners cutting their own hands to intensify the protest. Without hesitating any longer, Manuel grabs a knife from his room, cuts his own hand, and joins them in solidarity. Slowly, the protest begins turning into a full-scale rebellion. The prisoners threaten to commit suicide if their demands are not heard. Unable to control the situation, the warden finally comes to negotiate with them. Representing the prisoners are Dr. Boni and Manuel. They demand a proper doctor for medical treatment and request permission for a press meeting so the truth about the prison can be exposed. Seeing the situation spiraling out of control, the warden no longer has the courage to resist. Quietly, he agrees to their demands. During the press meeting, Dr. Boni and Manuel reveal all the cruelty, injustice, torture, and abuse happening inside the prison. The following day, when their story is broadcast on the radio, the prisoners begin to hope that the entire country will finally learn about the horrors they have been suffering through. For the first time in a long while, they feel a small sense of hope and relief returning to their lives. The next morning, Lucy comes to visit Manuel again. She shows him a newspaper clipping and tells him that people all across the country are talking about the prison's condition. Because Manuel's picture appeared in the newspapers, many people are praising him as well. Happiness can clearly be seen on Lucy's face. In the next scene, people from different parts of the country gather outside the prison and begin protesting in support of the inmates. Pino says that now even he wants to fight for the prisoners' rightful rights, but for that, they need some truly dangerous and fearless men to lead the movement. Pino then takes Manuel and Dr. Boni to the opposite side of the prison, where the most dangerous criminals are kept. These prisoners secretly controlled the prison's cigarette and alcohol business. The leader of this section is a man named Michael. Pino comes to shake hands with Michael so that he will support their movement. But Pino knows very well that Michael is not the kind of man who would agree so easily. Pino takes out a ring from his pocket and gives it to Michael. He tells him that Domingo murdered his son. The reason Pino reveals this information is because Michael has been searching for his son Agustin's killers for a very long time, but never found proof. Agustin was the same man who worked in the workshop, and he was actually Michael's son. Pino had bought this ring from the same people who were involved in Agustin's murder. Even after hearing everything, Michael still refuses to join them, and Pino leaves disappointed. But after carefully examining the ring, Michael realizes it truly belonged to his son. At that moment, he changes his decision. The next morning, a prisoner suddenly starts acting as if he is having an epileptic seizure. A guard approaches to check on him, but suddenly the prisoner pulls a knife and holds it against the guard's throat. He then marches straight toward the prison counter. The prisoner had only pretended to be sick in order to trap the guard. Pino is with him as well. Together, they demand that all the prison barricades be removed. As the terrified guard tries calling the control room, several prisoners set the prison counter on fire. Soon, inmates from every cell begin throwing their belongings outside and adding more things to the flames. Meanwhile, Manuel climbs onto the prison rooftop with several prisoners. Everyone starts protesting together to demand change inside the prison. The police are completely unable to control the situation. At the same time, the citizens outside the prison also begin shouting slogans in support of the inmates, making the rebellion even stronger. In the next scene, the warden brings lawyer Harold to calm the prisoners down. The inmates have already blocked off the prison with barricades out of fear of the warden. Harold explains that he is doing everything possible to secure justice for them. He promises that the warden will never again harass the prisoners or rule over them with dictatorship and cruelty. He says the warden has agreed to all of the prisoners' demands and asks everyone to come down from the rooftop peacefully. After Bonnie and Manuel convince the prisoners to calm down, the warden suddenly reveals his true face once again. The moment the prisoners lower their guard, he launches an attack on them. Later, the warden calls Manuel and tells him he is being transferred to another prison. He says the new prison has much better conditions and that if Manuel behaves well there, his sentence might even be reduced. The warden then shows Manuel a paper carrying Bonnie's signature. He claims that Bonnie has already agreed to transfer to the other prison and will leave the next morning. The warden gives Manuel time until then to think about his decision, but Manuel refuses to leave everyone behind. The next morning, Bonnie is seen leaving with the police carrying his bags. When the prisoners learn that Manuel refused the transfer offer, they become deeply emotional and begin giving him their valuable belongings as gifts. Among those gifts is the same suit that had once been taken away from him. In the next scene, Lucy comes to visit Manuel again. Over time, the two have grown much closer, and Manuel has also started developing feelings for her. That night, several guards suddenly arrive, blindfold Manuel and Pino, and secretly take them away. The authorities have decided to transfer them to another prison so they can no longer lead the other prisoners. The new prison is freezing cold, and both Manuel and Pino are wearing only thin clothes. They are placed in separate cells. A short while later, several guards come into Manuel's cell, throw powder all over his body, and brutally beat him without mercy. While being taken to quarantine afterward, Manuel briefly sees Pino and realizes that he has also been tortured badly. At this stage, Manuel does something shocking. He intentionally swallows a piece of metal. Because of this, the guards are forced to take him to a doctor for surgery, but Manuel refuses the operation unless Pino is treated first. Left with no other choice, the doctor agrees to his demand. When Pino is finally brought in for treatment, everyone is horrified to see the terrible condition of his body. Pino's entire body is covered in wounds and severe injuries. Afterward, both Pino and Manuel receive medical treatment. A few days later, the two finally recover. During conversations with other prisoners, Manuel learns that a new director has been appointed to oversee and monitor all the prisons in the country. The inmates collectively decide that when the director visits the prison, Manuel will represent the prisoners and speak on their behalf. On the day the director arrives for inspection, Manuel sits down with him and explains all the prisoners' problems, the injustice they face, and the brutal treatment happening inside the prison. The director assures him that once a new law is passed in Parliament, major changes will be made, and prisoners will no longer suffer the same kind of abuse. However, the director also orders that Manuel and Pino be transferred back to the Barcelona prison, since they had originally been taken away from there by force. When Manuel and Pino return to their old prison, all the inmates become extremely happy to see them again. Finally, the day everyone had been waiting for arrives. Parliament is supposed to pass a new law regarding prisoners' rights, but unfortunately, the law fails to pass. As a result, all the prisoners lose hope and begin accepting their miserable fate once again. One day, while Manuel is sitting quietly, a guard starts mocking the prisoners' appeal and making fun of their struggle for justice. Furious with anger, Manuel suddenly attacks the guard. Because of this incident, he is once again locked inside the quarantine cell. A few days later, Pino comes and gets Manuel released from there. Pino tells him that since all hope is almost gone, they should make one final attempt. The next day, Pino takes Manuel to an abandoned section on the far side of the prison. There's an old unused cell there along with a broken elevator. By this point, the year is 1978. Pino and Manuel come up with a dangerous plan. They decide to dig beneath the ground under the elevator in that abandoned area. If they can successfully create a tunnel there, escaping from the prison and saving their lives might finally become possible. The two begin carefully planning every detail. Together, they secretly form a trusted team of selected prisoners inside the jail. They know they must finish digging the tunnel as quickly as possible. The reason is that the prison authorities are planning to demolish that entire section and construct a new building there. Construction work is scheduled to begin in just 21 days. That means they have only 21 days left to complete the escape tunnel. If they fail within that time, escaping the prison will become impossible, and they will be forced to endure the prison's brutal torture for many more years. To work faster, the group divides itself into several smaller teams and immediately starts digging. Later, lawyer Harold comes to meet Manuel once again. Harold tries to reassure him by saying that his case will soon be brought before the court. But Manuel already knows these are nothing more than false promises, so he no longer takes Harold's words seriously. Meanwhile, the tunnel digging is almost complete. Deep underground, Manuel discovers a wall. On the other side of that wall is the city's main drainage system, which spreads throughout the streets and alleys of the entire city. If they can break through the wall and enter the drain, they will be able to follow the sewer routes and escape through any manhole in the city. After finally completing the tunnel, all the prisoners celebrate with excitement and joy. The next morning, Manuel and Pino gather a small bundle of necessary supplies and, along with their trusted team members, begin moving through the tunnel to escape the prison.
But when the other prisoners see so many inmates heading toward the opposite side of the prison together, they also start following them. Realizing something suspicious is happening, the guard on duty quickly shuts the gate. By that time, Manuel, Pino, and several other prisoners have already crossed through. They overpower the guard, tie him up, and bring him along to the tunnel entrance. Once they reach the tunnel, they release the guard and immediately begin escaping through the underground passage. After traveling through the tunnel for some time, Manuel and Pino finally climb out through a manhole onto a street somewhere in the city. Back inside the prison, however, many of the other prisoners are caught by the guards while trying to escape. Meanwhile, Manuel and Pino quickly reach a bus station and board a bus. Along the way, they also change their clothes, allowing them to blend in perfectly with the ordinary people around them without attracting any suspicion. Later, they get off at another bus station and decide to split up, each heading in a different direction for safety. At that moment, Manuel notices that Pino had secretly placed some money inside the fold of his shirt earlier, so he could survive and escape far away from the city. At last, Manuel and Pino successfully escape from the hell-like prison. Manuel then goes straight to Lucy. Lucy is overjoyed to see him alive and free. In the end, the two decide to spend the rest of their lives together. And with that, the movie comes to an end.